Hello, everybody. My name is Chuck Sicard, Global Partner Marketing Manager here at Progress. Thank you for attending today's live Sitefinity Partner webinar. This is part of an ongoing series that we're calling Insights into Sitefinity. And today's webinar is titled Content and Commerce Connected. The whole idea behind a content and commerce platform is to leverage all the capabilities that a web content management system delivers and use this in a commerce context. Building an integrated platform brings your brand one step closer to delivering the high personalized cross-channel experiences that today's digital savvy customers expect. During today's webinar, a couple items that will be highlighted is that you'll discover the benefits of a connected content and commerce platforms. You'll also learn the differences between a disconnected third-party commerce tool versus a seamless integration. You'll also see how to get the best from your CMS with Ucommerce. And finally, find out where the CMS stops and where the Ucommerce begins. With that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to the man of the hour. And Soren, it's yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Soren Spanling-Lund. As you can see, I'm the CEO and founder of Ucommerce. And I have my colleague with me today, John Pratcher, who heads up our US operations. Do you want to say hi, John?
I absolutely do. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webinar here. Absolutely looking forward to this great relationship between Sitefinity and Ucommerce, and obviously I look forward to meeting each and every one of you in person over the next few months. So definitely looking forward to some great times here. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, John. And today we're looking at the new content and commerce power couple, Sitefinity and Ucommerce. And what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to take you through a little bit on what is Ucommerce, what can you expect from this stuff. But I'm really excited to be here today because this is almost the first chance I have to show the world what we have been working on with Progress for the last 12 months or so. And what we're doing today is we're basically announcing a strategic partnership between Progress and Ucommerce to deliver integrated digital commerce across channels and devices. So the general idea is that we're going to bring the commerce capabilities to the table, and Progress is going to bring the CMS and digital marketing capabilities to the table, and we're going to meet in the middle with a nicely integrated solution. And that's what we're taking a look at today for the first time ever. We've been working on this for a while, as I mentioned, and I just, it's easy to put up a slide like this and talk about strategic partnerships and everybody's happy. But I wanted to show you at least one of the slides that were circulating as we were formulating the partnership and how we basically sort of felt about it, and that's this. So this used to be one of the confidential slides from Progress that was circulated internally to sort of explain what's going on. But this sort of says very nicely what it's all about, basically. We're going to meet in the middle, and it's going to be a beautiful thing here. Now, before we dive into the actual Sitefinity and Ucommerce offering today, let me just give you a little bit of background on what Ucommerce is. So I founded Ucommerce back in 2009, and with the purpose of solving this problem. So back then, it was pretty common to have, when you were creating an e-commerce experience, you would usually end up in a situation where you would have two websites that were essentially powering the experience. You would have the brand website, site A, that would deal with all the act of telling the story around your brand and all that. And when time came to transact, customers would be taken out of that beautiful experience into the transactional piece, which would be completely disconnected from the content piece. And that's basically what we set out to solve with Ucommerce. The difference, so back when we did it, content and commerce was not really a thing. But what we realized back then was that if we were to deliver content and commerce connected to the customers, we couldn't really do both pieces ourselves. At Ucommerce, we do commerce and commerce only. We had no intention of doing a content management system. So the model actually ended up to deliver these two key pieces in one unified platform, was to basically go and integrate and partner with great CMS vendors in the marketplace to integrate our offering into that, so we could so each vendor could basically focus on their core competency. So for us, it would be commerce, and for a company like Progress and Sitefinity, it would be on the content piece. And we then create the glue that enables the technologies to merge, and that essentially enables the two teams that are involved in doing commerce to mesh. Now, and remember, I'm going to stop from time to time and ask you if you have any questions. So if you have questions, make sure and use that little chat box on your screen and type it in, and we'll make sure and stop to recap some of those questions there. Now, let me talk a little bit about more about Ucommerce here. So Ucommerce has been around for a while. So it was founded in Denmark in 2009. We now have offices around the world these days, and we have a bunch of installations globally in every country almost. So, and we are in fact the only commerce platform out there that focused really on bringing two key pieces together in a CMS agnostic way. And we've been fortunate to work with some of the real big players out there. So, and what's really fun about this slide is that each of these cases here represent different types of commerce. So everything from charity to merchandising to subscription sites to B2B, B2C, auction portals. Ucommerce has done it all. But we're going to take a look at it in more detail in a little bit. So before we get to that, let me talk a little bit about Ucommerce for Sitefinity. So really the goal of this product offering that we're bringing to market with Progress is basically to create a commerce first and content first seamlessly integrated experience. So rather than having a platform where the main focus is just CMS and marketing and then a little bit of commerce, or just a commerce piece with a lot of focus on commerce but and just a little bit on content, it's a best of breed approach basically, where commerce and content are first from the from the two vendors here. So let's take a look at what it actually means when I say seamlessly integrated with Sitefinity. So for this exercise here, I've brought a learning tool that a technical visual learning tool that will help me illustrate how it works. And are you ready for this? This is what it looks like. It's a highly technical thing, but I'll make sure and explain it to you. So this is essentially the architecture of Ucommerce. What I'm trying to say with this visual here is that Ucommerce cannot exist on its own. It needs another piece to work. It needs a CMS like Sitefinity to function. It's not whole unless these two pieces are there. So what that fundamentally means is that Ucommerce assumes that there is a CMS that can help us with various things like rendering a web page, logging in customers, all of the traditional virtues of a CMS. So it means that Sitefinity can leverage Ucommerce. So when time comes to create a website, Sitefinity is in the driver's seat for that website. All the rendering, everything happens through Sitefinity. So the development model and the flexibility of the front end is exactly the way that you're used to. But here's the kicker. It also means that Ucommerce can leverage Sitefinity services, and I'm going to show you an example. But basically, Ucommerce doesn't ship with any duplicated services that Sitefinity always provides. Ucommerce doesn't have a media gallery because it doesn't make sense for us to have it when the CMS is much better to provide that. Ucommerce doesn't have a login capability because Sitefinity provides that, and we just hook into that. And I'm going to show you exactly how that works. What it boils down to is essentially that Sitefinity renders everything. So everything that you're familiar with, the way you're building sites, stays the same. There's no difference there. We do not impose any sort of canned templates or anything like that forces you to make certain choices from an e-commerce perspective. If you want a single page checkout, that's fine. If you want multi-page checkout, that's fine too. If you want a website without a checkout flow, that's fine as well. It means that we can leverage marketing automation and the DEC capabilities of Sitefinity. Really, this is one of the areas where a Generation 3 e-commerce platform like Ucommerce becomes incredibly powerful, because we can e-commerce enable all these traditional marketing tools to work in a commerce context. And the beautiful thing about that is that it doesn't require a lot of doing from a customer perspective. Once these tools are enabled, once abandoned cart automated retention flows work through Sitefinity, it's a straight win to the bottom line, basically. So I'm very excited about the capabilities that we can bring to market by creating this seamless whole. Personalization, A/B testing, all of this will be supported by the commerce pieces as well. Our goal is essentially to e-commerce enable every aspect of Sitefinity, and that of course includes the CMS and all the surrounding marketing capabilities. But it all starts with the digital merchants experience, right? So what it all starts with is essentially a full commerce back office, fully integrated into Sitefinity, and this is one of the key differences between a bolt-on and a fully integrated commerce engine. So because we by our DNA is to live inside the CMS, we do not, require you to log into a separate platform. We do not require to have separate infrastructure. Ucommerce lives inside Sitefinity physically and from a user perspective. So there is a seamless transition between the two. And really, our goal when we designed this platform was to create a situation where customers can't tell where the CMS ends and the commerce piece begins. And what's really interesting is that when we speak to customers that run Ucommerce today, they tend to know which CMS they run, but they tend to not really be aware that they're actually running Ucommerce, which is exactly the way we want it, because it means that this integration has succeeded. And let me just show you another example. Remember when I said that the DNA of Ucommerce needs the CMS. We expect it to be there. And let me just show you one little example of that, the media gallery, right? So what we're looking at here is a category set up inside of Ucommerce. And it has media on it, obviously. And that media is stored not in Ucommerce, but in Sitefinity. So because, we want to let each of the platforms deal with the area of doing business online that they do best, right? So for Ucommerce, it's taxes, it's prices, it's catalogs, it's stores, and all that good stuff. So we focus on that, and Sitefinity focus on the softer, more marketing aspects of creating the websites, and of course, media is part of that. Content is another example. That when you want to link that into your catalogs, of course, that comes from Sitefinity. There are no duplicated services between Sitefinity and Ucommerce. So that's a little bit of a look into what it means when I say a seamless integration between Sitefinity and Ucommerce. And I just want to stop for a minute and ask you if you have any questions so far, anything you'd like to, anything you're wondering about so far.
Hey, Soren, we have not received any questions in the chat yet.
That's great. That means I must be doing awesome. Remember, if you have questions, just fire away. I will just assume everything is crystal clear at this point. Let me show you a demo while we wait. So it's easy to talk about this stuff, but I figured it would be interesting to take a look at what Ucommerce actually is, so you can see some of this stuff already in action. So let's switch to a browser here, right there. So I'm going to log into our demo environment here, and once we ship Ucommerce for Sitefinity, this demo environment will be available to you as well to work with. So we like to be very transparent in the way we approach the going to market, and for us that means that you can get your hands on the software, try it out, play around with it, see if you like it, and then from there you can make a decision. So let's log into Sitefinity, and as I mentioned, there is only one system here. So of course Sitefinity is responsible for creating all the login capabilities for this experience. And once we log in, you'll see a familiar dashboard. You'll see, well, let's see if we can get in here. There we go. So Sitefinity, right? And Ucommerce on top. And the general idea here is that we will bring in all of our management tools for Ucommerce into Sitefinity here. And the cool thing is that because we've been in business for so long, these tools are actually exactly the same across all the CMSs we support. So when we integrate with a new partner like Progress, it's not a scratch job. It's not something we have to reinvent from bottom up. We are literally taking the tools we already have on our shelves, and we are integrating them into the CMS we have. They will still look and feel like Sitefinity. They will sort of give you that unified experience, but the core of the platform is one that's driving thousands of e-commerce solutions today. So even though the integration with Sitefinity is new, the core platform that does all the heavy lifting like discounting, taxes, and all that is actually shared across all of our customer base. So let's take a look at Catalog Manager. Ucommerce is a multi-channel platform, and we're going to take a look at more about what that means. But basically, we operate with the notion of a sales channel, and the general idea is that you can use these for general things like like in this case where we're dealing with multiple markets. So if you're doing business across markets, one channel for each. If you're doing multiple brand identities, maybe you have horizontally integrated a number of brand identities over the years, well, that can be used for that as well. And B2B, B2C, we'll take a look at a bunch of these things. And let's just take a look at some of the settings here. So another example of that assumption that the CMS is here is actually right down here in the member section. So we have the ability to create customers as members, of course. So a customer can log in and view order history, all the things that you would expect. And again, we do need to know the concept of a customer, but members, for example, that log in on the front end, well, they more naturally belong inside of the CMS. And so you'll see here that we have integrations into Sitefinity to give us access to all the member groups and types and all that. So when a customer logs in on the front end, it is actually through Sitefinity, so there's nothing new there. Ucommerce just attaches itself to those processes. Same thing for websites. So when you're setting up an experience inside of Sitefinity and Ucommerce, Sitefinity brings the website, so one website per channel, and we bring the store, right? So we just ask Sitefinity, which websites do you have, and how would you like to connect those with the stores? So that means you can have completely different websites with different services, like the B2B, B2C example from before. Well, the B2B website will probably be focused on quick ordering, listings, history, invoices, stuff like that, things that get the customer to purchase faster. Where the B2C side will probably be very different and focus more on telling the story, the softer aspects of the products. And so having two completely separate experiences in Sitefinity attached to stores in Ucommerce makes a lot of sense. Now let's dive down. So in addition to being a multi-channel solution, it's also a multi-catalog solution. And catalogs in Ucommerce has really three main jobs. So the first one is to bring in structure, right? So set up the category structure. Second, it is to attach pricing to the products that happen to be in these catalogs. So you'll see it here. We've set up 6 different price groups, and this is a B2C scenario. So we've enabled multi-currency for this one. But it can also be used, as you can see, for B2B scenarios. So you could actually enable B2B pricing on this particular catalog as well. So so those are the first two things that Ucommerce uses the catalog for. And the last thing, of course, are the products themselves, which live inside the Ucommerce PIM system. And the general idea there is that a product will live inside this PIM system and then be shared out across the channels that you've set up. So a product can live across stores, it can live across catalogs, and of course across categories. The general idea is you set up your products once and then you make them available in the channels you want. So we minimize the management overhead in that you don't need to set up multiple copies of a product, for example, when you want to sell it in multiple markets. Let's just dive down a little more. We can see the example from before right here on the product. So if we navigate into Sitefinity, you can see here, well, we can select the picture from there. Completely seamless experience. Going back into Sitefinity, bringing out that media stuff, and basically what we have here is the ability to support taxonomy. So what we can do is we can enable on your behalf to set up what you need to know about your products. There's a whole long story about that I'm going to save you for so far. We're going to dive into more details about what Ucommerce can actually do as a platform. But that was a real quick demo. There are more tools in here, of course. We have the order management system, so full workflows for processing orders if you need to do that inside of the inside the commerce piece, including payment gateways, integrations, baskets, gift cards, all the stuff you would expect from something like that. We have the marketing manager in here, which does discounts. So we have a really cool unified promotions engine that enable you to set up dynamic rules to override pricing and things like that. You're all going to have to come to Progress next to get a peek at that. But it's real cool stuff, and we're going to show it in more detail at Next in a few weeks. Good. So that was the demo. Now let's dive back into the other side of this. So remember, what we're bringing to market today is or in a few weeks at least, is is a content first and a commerce first offering. So we took a look at the content first. Sitefinity is in driver's seat. Ucommerce augments Sitefinity with commerce capabilities, and we have those two-way integrations going on. Now let's take a look at what Ucommerce is, what type of commerce platform that is. And to illustrate that, I've brought along a friend of ours called Fritz Hansen, or Fritz Hansen, which is it's a Danish manufacturer and designer of these types of products, right? Designer chairs and furniture in sort of a broad sense. This is the egg that you may be familiar with by Arne Jacobsen. Basically, it's high-end furniture that they're selling. And the reason I brought them along is that they have a very commerce requirement. And that is that they need to sell in multiple markets, basically. But the challenge here is that when you're selling in Europe, it's not the same as selling in the US, and it's certainly not the same as selling in APAC. And so they needed something to fix that. And let me just go through some of the scenarios where a multi-channel platform like Ucommerce and Sitefinity will help that. So in their case, they are selling a lot of the same products across these channels. However, in some markets, they're not selling some of their products, and so they need to differentiate. So they just, use that sharing capability we took a look at before to differentiate the products that are made available. One catalog for the US, one catalog for Europe, one catalog for APAC. Some products shared, other products unique to the individual markets. Prices vary, right? So in the Eurozone, all right, we all operate with euros basically, but each country has different buying power. So you can't just price products in euros and be done with it. The Germans can afford more than the Portuguese, for example. So you want to be able to differentiate your prices. So prices may vary, and you will need to attach multiple price lists, like we saw before with the multi-currency scenario. But we really use price lists for both scenarios. You can price in different currencies and in the same currency, basically. And it's basically up to you how you want to use it. So when you're selling in the US, you want US dollars. If you're selling cross-border to Canada, you want to use a local currency for that. Other differences, tax rules, right? US sales tax, European VAT, GST in Australia. It's not going to be the same if you're selling internationally. So you need to differentiate by channel. Same thing for payments. Customers in different markets will have different expectations of what they see. In the US, a lot of customers expect a really seamless integration with the merchant system. So you don't see the difference. Everything is processed by the merchant. Typically, in Europe, it's more common to have payments happen, off-site from the shopping experience. Just two different approaches. Either is right for the audience it's targeted for, but you do need to differentiate those experiences depending on which market you're in. And a multi-channel commerce solution is the way to go for that. Same thing for shipping. You know what? You're probably going to use different freight carriers in different markets, so you want to differentiate that. Promotions, another no-brainer. You're probably not going to run the same promotions in every market. For the US, you're probably going to run a set of promotions that are different from Europe. For the B2B channel, probably a set of promotions that are different than what you see in the B2C channel. And finally, once the order's placed, you're probably going to need a team or two to actually fulfill these orders. Whether that happens in Ucommerce or not is completely up to the merchant. We do provide some OMS capabilities, and we do provide distributed order management capabilities as part of this multi-channel setup. So when you have multiple stores taking orders, these orders will be stored with the particular store in question, and you can have multiple commerce teams actually attached to those stores to only deal with fulfillment of the particular store that they're working with. So it's just one example, right? The international scenario where you're selling across multiple markets, you do need to differentiate a vast number of things across these channels to make sure you're successful in your commerce offering. Now, we have a few other very interesting scenarios that I'm going to run you through here. So another one, this is actually the scenario Ucommerce was originally designed for, is when you have multiple brand identities. And Rosendahl we're looking at here is one that actually operates 12 different brand identities inside one instance of Ucommerce with with the CMS there. And the cool thing is that there's basically 12 websites in there that have, some commonalities like the banners and things, or the menus and that. But what's different here is that the products are completely separate. So even though it's the same solution that's operating this stuff, they do have different channels set up, each with their own range of products. They don't share anything, but they totally could if they wanted to. So one team in this case is actually managing these 12 identities in one central location. Here's another interesting one, BIC, that you're probably familiar with. They do, in this case, it's a B2C solution. BIC is traditionally a B2B company. They do e-commerce with us, at least in the US and Canada. And what they wanted to do was to create a B2C experience alongside the B2B experience, where they could focus more on telling the story and reach out to the customer. And we see this more and more by manufacturers and distributors that you have this B2B and B2C component in the same solution, basically to get a better feel for your end customer. And just to make sure that your brand is reinforced out there for the rest of your retail channel. So another example of what you can do with a multi-channel commerce solution. Here's another one. This is the ultimate online, I call it the ultimate click and collect scenario. Basically, this is Abu Dhabi airport selling duty-free items. And the setup is this. What they're doing is that they have one online store that we're looking at right now. And then, so as a customer, what I can do is I can order for that store prior to going to the airport, and I can then pick up at the airport. But I call it the ultimate click and collect scenario because what happens is really that, each store inside the airport will potentially fulfill part of my order here. And so they actually needed to combine online and offline. So what happens is that when my order is placed, each of the offline stores actually have a store set up inside of Ucommerce that then receive a part of the order that they need to fulfill. So once they've done that, I as a customer can arrive at the airport, go to a collection point, and actually pick up my order. So it's kind of a fun thing. Instead of actually going to one store to pick up, it's actually multiple stores working together to ultimately provide me a pickup point for everything. And I think this is probably my favorite one. I really love when online and offline meet. And the reason I brought this along is that it's an offline-online combination where the e-commerce platform is used as a point of sale system. So these kiosks that we're looking at here, each of these are actually running a website with Ucommerce on it, with a store set up to drive these ticketing machines in front of the venue. So what they're selling are tickets for entrance to this venue here. So you walk up with your credit card, you stick it in the slot down here, you enter your PIN code over here, and out comes a ticket down here. But it is an e-commerce experience that drives everything. And the insight that the company that created this particular offering had is that it's incredibly difficult and expensive to create embedded software, keep it up to date. So their insight was basically, well, why not run a browser on this thing and be able to actually update these terminals essentially at will, which is exactly what they're doing. And what they also found was that because they're running these kiosks on a multi-channel offering, they can actually have multiple of these kiosks around the venue that serves different purposes. So here is tickets because it's at the entrance, but when you get to the food court, it's no longer tickets, it's actually meals that you're buying, and you can just walk up, and they're actually using the fulfillment systems in the kitchen to fulfill the meal orders, which is kind of cool. And the final one that I'm going to show you here is a new thing that, well, it's not quite new, but it's sort of one of the latest trends that I've started seeing is e-commerce as a platform. So Wolters Kluwer that we're looking at here is an information company that sells their products to insurance companies, banks, and all sorts of other things. And what they needed was, they're a huge company with lots of divisions and things like that. And each of the divisions basically required an ability to sell these digital products to their constituency. The challenge is that each of these divisions ended up having their own tech. So when we engaged with Wolters Kluwer and asked them what they were using today for a technology stack, they said basically everything. So every conceivable ERP, CMS, commerce platform, all of it. So what they wanted to do was actually create a unified platform that they could then offered to their divisions from centralized. So they ended up creating an offering where they have essentially 3 packages each division can opt into, and with each package you would gain more capability basically for depending on how much you would want to pay for it. And we see this more and more also in B2B scenarios where you combine B2B and B2C, where you may have a network of retailers that are loosely affiliated with you, but in order to affiliate these retailers more strongly to you as a distributor or a manufacturer, you can start offering them an e-commerce experience through your own platforms. Essentially, what Wolters Kluwer here did for their own internal organization, but it works really well in a larger supply chain scenario as well, and we do see that happening more and more. What I'm trying to say with this is that the winners of tomorrow basically need to leverage every available channel to reach customers, and the way to do it is essentially through a multi-channel offering like Sitefinity and Ucommerce. Are there any questions at this point that we need to talk about?
Yes. Hi, Peter. Excuse me, Soren. We do have a couple questions in here. So Chris is also going to ask a couple of them. There's quite a few that came in. The first one is, Ucommerce is also available on other CMS platforms. Is there a strategic partnership, a shift in focus for Ucommerce, or is this another pillar?
So this is another pillar. Our strategic bet has basically been to partner with the top .NET-based CMS vendors out there, and Sitefinity is definitely difficult to get around. So we see it as sort of the last milestone that we needed to complete to have the full suite of offering, basically.
Okay, so Soren, we had several questions regarding updates and updates. When we do Sitefinity updates, and then when Ucommerce does updates, what's that process look like, timing, and how's everything handled?
That's a great question. So luckily, we've been doing this for a long time. And so I can, rather than talking about how I think it's going to be, I can tell you exactly how it's going to work. The way it works is that we've tried some different things over the years. So we tried to be very proactive and very sort of almost be able to release prior to the CMS being available, and that didn't work so well because software tends to change. So even if it's a beta, if you integrate with that thing, it might change significantly, and so you'll end up wasting a lot of time. So what we've ended up doing, which works really well, is that because these partnerships are strategic in nature, it means that we tend to have insights into the upcoming versions of the CMS, so we can start to prepare our updates and things like that. And what that means is that we'll typically know once a CMS ships a final version what we need to do, and we can implement that fairly quickly. Once the initial integration that we're doing right now is complete, we tend to be able to ship updated versions of Ucommerce within a week or two of a new major version. Unless the CMS vendor decides to re-platform the entire thing, start over, then of course it's from scratch. But that doesn't happen that much. We've only seen it once, and that failed pretty horribly. So I don't think we're going to see that too much. So that's from a CMS perspective. We tend to be able to ship within a few weeks or a couple of weeks of the CMS being shipped, and that's fine because traditionally we don't see a lot of customers just jumping immediately onto new versions of a CMS anyway. So upgrade processes needs to be planned and things like that. So we're usually ready before the first project is ready to go. So that's on the CMS side. So we just follow along. Our primary goal is to basically support new versions of a CMS as quickly as possible. Now, the other side is, how does it work with Ucommerce itself when you need to upgrade that? Well, we ship Ucommerce as a NuGet package, basically. So you link us in on top of your Sitefinity solution. That sets Ucommerce up automatically inside that. And you know how NuGet works. When you need a new version, you update the dependencies, and Ucommerce is able to update your solution automatically. So it basically knows what version you're running right now, which version you're trying to get to, and it does the changes to make that happen. We try and make that as seamless as possible because in my previous career, I spent a lot of time. So NuGet packages, they update automatically was basically what I spent ton of time saying. But basically what we wanted to do was to create a situation where you don't spend a lot of time updating your solutions, because I was in a situation in my previous career where I had to work with these types of platforms. And the challenge there was basically that, we would spend time, oodles and oodles of time setting that stuff up. We would read Word documents and things like that. And it was like, nope, don't want to spend time on that. So that's how updates work. We ship within weeks of the CMS updates, and your own updates of the platform happens via NuGet. So fairly seamless process. Hope that answers the question.
Another question, and there are several, Soren. Can Ucommerce leverage the existing Sitefinity integration to like Marketo, Eloqua for customer management and setup?
So I'm not familiar with those types of tools, but I can talk sort of in broader terms about how we think about the integration with a CMS that offers online marketing capabilities. And essentially, it's all about the contact inside of the marketing tools. And if those tools are integrated, with the contact, we will be integrated with those contacts as well. And so in that case, the answer would be yes. Sort of, I'm saying that carefully right now because I don't know the details. But generally, what we see is that we all meet in that middle around that contact, and we augment that with information from the customer information we capture. And if these Marketo integrations and others work that same way, well, the information will just be gathered up in that one central location. So the answer would be yes in that case.
So when a question specifically about Ucommerce this time, and the person wants to know about extending functionality to add custom discount code logic, for example, buy one get one free.
Oh yeah, I'm actually going to cover that very shortly. So I think we should maybe pause the question.
We'll table that question.
And then I'm going to show you exactly. You're gonna love this, I promise. So in my sort of humble own opinion here. So let's power on through. So real quick, what Ucommerce is all about. It's about the catalog that we looked at, the multi-channel solution, multiple catalogs, multiple price lists, multiple currencies, multiple everything basically. It's about the marketing foundation. We're going to take a look at that in a little bit. And yes, you can do the things that you asked about. It's about search, faceted navigation, getting to products real quick. It's about transactions, baskets, wish lists, gift cards. It's about order management. And of course, on top of all that, we have security foundation, which essentially enables you to slice and dice your solution via permissions. So if I, as a range manager, should only see products that pertain to store A, that's the only thing I can do. Or if I am the marketing manager and I should only worry about promotions, lock me down in that. Or if I should only worry about promotions for a certain channel, lock me down like that. There are many opportunities to deal with that. For the PIM that we looked at, I just wanted some key points here to make sure that they are clearly understood. So configurable taxonomy, that's incredibly important, right? Ucommerce has no notion of what a product is beyond that it has a SKU and some prices attached. Taxonomy is really our way to deal with the highly complex world of selling a product, because we don't know if it's a shirt or a tie or a piece of jewelry or complex machinery or computer equipment, whatever. You need different pieces of information for different types of product scenarios, and so the configurable taxonomy is really the key of being able to sell in almost any vertical. I think the most fun we have with this is either when we need to do product configuration, so when we need to sell training or bookings, and actually in that vein when we need to sell tickets and stuff like that. The taxonomy is also fun because we need to deal with stock management that deals with allocation of seats and time and things like that. So there's a lot of awesome opportunities in there. Products in multiple channels. I think I talked that to death, so I'm not going to talk more about that. We are multilingual, of course. We are out of Denmark, and Denmark is a small nation of 5 million people. So we need to speak English. We need to speak Swedish. We need to speak German. We need to deal with the world around us. So everything in Ucommerce is multilingual, architected ground up. So yeah, no worries there. Product relationships, of course, and their custom, the automatic product relationships. So Ucommerce has the ability to deduce purchasing, well, not to deduce purchasing behavior. It has the ability to capture purchasing behavior, of course, because after all, that's what an e-commerce platform does. But it can then turn around and start to suggest products based on that purchasing behavior right out the box. So there are some fun scenarios there. If you're dealing with tens of thousands of SKUs or hundreds of thousands of SKUs, you probably don't want to connect those manually together. It's a great way to die a little bit inside when you need to do that. So automatic relationships are great for that. Configurable products bundles, they're just sort of variations over a theme here. We talked briefly about that promotions engine. I can just talk about it a little more. So the marketing foundation in Ucommerce are built around three key pieces, which is really just a rules engine that you set up. So the way it works is you have an area where you define the rules that the customer must satisfy to trigger a discount. So basically that could be you need to have one of these promo codes, you need to buy one of these products, you need to buy above such and such threshold. You string those rules together and Ucommerce will verify that they were met and then trigger discounts like free gift or percentage off order line, percentage off order total, free shipping, whatever. And the beautiful thing is that it's extensible. And everything is, in fact, extensible. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Order management, payment providers, actually, these are pretty cool. They support the full payment lifecycle of a payment, everything from initial authorization to capture of money once products ship, to refund and voids of transactions when returns occur. So all of it. System integration, right? So e-commerce is there will be some integration with other systems like an ERP or CRM or DAM or PIM or whatever. And so in the box, we have the Uconnector integration engine for you as well. So it's a lightweight integration engine, so it doesn't compete with the big boys. But when you just need a catalog synchronized out of your ERP system, or you just need some orders shot back into your OMS system, Uconnector is a great bet if you don't have integration infrastructure already in place. And then the flexible app platform. And I'm actually not going to talk about that. I am, but I'm going to do it like this instead. So I started my career as a developer. These days, I don't get to code as much, but we actually wanted to solve two things with Ucommerce. We wanted to bring content and commerce together, like we've seen. We wanted to marry awesome CMS like Sitefinity with awesome e-commerce capabilities from Ucommerce. So we've seen how that works and what the benefits of that is. The other thing that's really near and dear to our hearts is the development experience, because e-commerce is not about if you need to extend. E-commerce is about when you need to extend and how much, right? And so all of Ucommerce is architected using a principle we call framework first. And framework first is really, the user story for framework first would really be, as a developer, I want to extend any aspect of Ucommerce. That's really what that means. What we've done is we've created a platform ground up where everything is a component. So every little piece of Ucommerce, price engine, UI, tax engines, promotional rules, all of it are components. And because they're components, they can be swapped out because everything rests on a dependency injected architecture. So what that really means is that if you're not happy with our price engine, you can swap out your own, and swap it out with your own. If you need an additional rule in the promotions engine, like we just talked about, you can add new rules that work alongside the others. If you want to customize a workflow inside of Ucommerce for order management or something like that, you can do that. And the real beautiful thing is that we've leveraged a set of really simple principles that most of you will probably already be familiar with, the solid principles, which are really just 5 principles that you can use to factor awesome object-oriented software. So what this means is that the components have the right size. They can be swapped out. For those of you who know this, you know what this means for the platform. Let me just show you an example of how we applied Solid. So one of the cool principles of Solid is the open-close principle, the O in Solid. And so what that means is that you should be open for extension, but closed for modification. So you shouldn't have to actually change the code of Ucommerce to make it do something else. Is essentially what that means. And one of the ways that we work with this principle is via something we call pipelines. And what we have here on the right-hand side of the screen is, in fact, a component, and more specifically, a pipeline. So this is the checkout pipeline, as you can see. And this is essentially the piece of business logic that happens when a basket needs to get turned into an order. So typically when we have payment. And the general idea with pipelines is that they should be readable. You should have a sense of what actually happens. So as you read over these steps here, hopefully you're getting a pretty clear picture of what it is Ucommerce actually does with that. And the beauty is that this is what we ship out of the box, but you may need something else, right? And so what we've done is we've enabled you to swap out the entire checkout pipeline if you want. That's a little much. So we've also enabled you to actually add your own components wherever you feel like it makes sense. If you want to step here between add audit trail and set voucher uses, you can do that. If you want to get rid of, I don't know, if you want to take over for generating order numbers for new orders, just get rid of this stage and add your own in. And of course, you can build these pipelines from scratch. And just to be very clear, pipelines is just one example of extension points. Everything is extensible by default in Ucommerce. Just saying. Now here's another example that from Solid that enables you to swap out things. So here's an example of one of these pipeline tasks we just looked at. And what you'll notice here is in the constructor, we actually take services that we need to actually calculate order line tax, which is the case here, right? And because we are using the dependency inversion control inversion principle in the way we build the platform, it means that we just rely on an iTax service in this particular case. And what that means for you is that you can actually send in other implementations than the one we happen to ship with. So if you want a US sales tax service, if you want an Avalara-based tax service, if you want VAT-based tax service, you can ship your own in and take over that responsibility. You can even see here as we're accessing data, well, you could actually potentially swap out the entire database of Ucommerce if you want to. Don't do it. It's a lot of work, but it is possible. And just the I in Solid, I'll be real brief about this. So the I pricing service, the I tax service that we saw before, what we try and do is we try to separate our interfaces into smaller interfaces. So you, as developers, you don't have to implement too much when you want to swap something out. So the rule of thumb in Ucommerce in the product team is that if you're creating an interface with more than one method on it, you need to have a real good reason to do so, because you tend to impose, more requirements on the developer when you do so. So here's an example of two, but generally they tend to have one or two, and that's basically it. So fairly easy stuff to work with. And the beautiful thing is, you've seen all the underlying complexities and all that. We wrap all this in a beautiful headless commerce API that you can leverage in your solutions that really make a lot of the classic e-commerce scenarios one-liners, right? So here we get the basket. Here we set up shipping information. Here we initiate the payment flow, and here we check out. This is essentially, the payment page, and you can see how we reduce a lot of the classic things to one line of code. And of course, all of this are pipelines under the covers, so you can hook into the APIs and modify their behaviors. And just to top it off, once all this is done, we give you the Ucommerce apps or app platform to actually package up your creations into a NuGet package and ship it with Ucommerce as an extension. So this is a case, this is an example of the gift card app that we create ourselves. You'll notice here that we are in the apps folder of Ucommerce. It's the gift cards app. And you notice we have some configuration down here. We have some UI. But look at this, we also have a bin folder, a local bin folder sitting outside of the websites folder. The reason we have it, and the reason I pointed out, is that we've spent so many years creating e-commerce platform for CMSs that we know some of the pitfalls that exist around creating extensions for platforms. And one of the pitfalls is that everybody wants to ship with some of the same dependencies. And the problem with that is that not everybody can actually agree which version of set dependency they want to work with. And so what we did is we isolated each app into its own area. So you can ship with your own dependencies, essentially making it easier. And if you want to get rid of this app, basically delete the folder and you're good to go. All right. So let us see here. Good. That's actually the development experience of Ucommerce. You use Sitefinity, and then we add a bunch of other things to enable your e-commerce scenarios, essentially. Now let's open it up for questions again and see if there's anything in addition to the questions that already was asked.
Yes, hi Soren. We do have several questions,
Great.
and looking at the time, I think I'll ask a question, and then Chris will ask a question, and then we'll see where we're at on time. But I just want to reassure everybody that we are capturing the questions. Any that we don't get to, because there are several, we will answer directly with you. So continue to keep sending questions. We're still capturing them. So my question is that I'll ask is, how does Ucommerce handle the changes to GDPR?
Yeah. So the beautiful thing is that GDPR and e-commerce are very compatible things, right? Because GDPR is really it's a pretty pragmatic approach to personal information, and so what GDPR says, if you need to have a reason to store information, right? And when we talk about e-commerce, there is a very clear reason to store a customer's information, because you can't ship to the customer unless you store that information. So in that case, consent is actually fairly easy with commerce, because it's basically legitimate interest that is your legal reason for working with information. So far so good. The other thing is right to be forgotten, for example, is not really a thing with e-commerce, because there are other legalities around the invoicing information and all that needs to be satisfied first. So GDPR does not override, for example, the requirement of typically needing to store invoice information for a number of years. So the right to be forgotten is really, you can't really do that in an e-commerce scenario, because invoice information, right? So what Ucommerce does to support information requests and all that is that we provide documentation that show you where we store information. But the beautiful thing about a content and commerce offering like Ucommerce for Sitefinity is that it's really Sitefinity that ends up dealing with a lot of the GDPR issues, because like we talked about the contacts before, it's really stored inside of Sitefinity and really only used for the purposes that Sitefinity sets out to do. And so from our perspective, we really just need to talk about where the billing information is, what is the customer information, and that's basically it. So we provide some documentation around that, so you know where it is. But deleting said information and all that is not really going to be a big issue, at least for 5 or more years, depending on which market you're in. I hope that answers the question. Okay.
All right, and then just the final question, I think it is timely or appropriate that it's the final question, is around the timeline of when things will be released.
Well, you know what? It just so happens that I have a slide that shows that. It's almost as if you knew that already. So let's talk about that. So what we've been looking at so far is the L1 integration. So that's what we call the sort of very imaginatively called a level 1 integration, and that's the CMS integration. That is essentially bringing all of our tools into Sitefinity. And the goal here is to ship at Progress Next the beta version of that, so you can get your hands on it. You can start to play with it, provide us feedback in addition to the partners that are already working with it, and then within a month or so, we will have a general availability of the L1 integration, so you can start building, or actually not building, but actually deploying e-commerce solutions on top of this platform. It's appropriate to start building around June timeframe. Once that's done, we're going to switch gears and provide the accelerator on top. The accelerator is essentially a best practice implementation of Ucommerce for Sitefinity. It's a website based on MVC widgets, all the bells and whistles, that gives you a foundation on which to start. So it's not required to start out building, but it is a very handy foundation to have. Then once that's done, we're going to do the L2 integration, which is basically DEC integration. So all the marketing capabilities will be commerce enabled at that point. And we're basically looking at, that's probably going to be the year. Alongside that, we're building the Sitefinity migration tool, and that should also be shipped alongside the first version of Ucommerce. This will essentially enable you to get out of Sitefinity Commerce and into Ucommerce, migrating all of your data, all your stores, catalogs, orders, and all that stuff into Ucommerce as a platform. What it can't do, unfortunately, is it can't port the code for you. You're gonna have to do that yourselves. But we can get you started fairly quickly with that. So we've been fortunate to work with a partner from the US called C2. who've been very kindly involved in this process and building out this tool for all of us to use. So that's the timeline. And oh, go ahead.
Well, we've referenced Progress Next just to make sure everyone's familiar with that. So that's the last week of May. So for those of you who aren't attending, we will be making the content that Ucommerce is presenting there available post-event.
And just to add really quick, this is John. We will, fingers crossed, but we will highlight a few initial wins here at Progress Next between obviously Sitefinity and Ucommerce. So we're very excited to be looking forward to that as well.
Oh yeah. And if you want to be among those wins, please go and check us out on ucommerce.net/Sitefinity. What we have there is an opportunity for you to read a little more about this new strategic partnership between Progress and Ucommerce, and also about what it is that we intend to bring to market. And if you have additional questions or would like to have a private showing of this, there's also an opportunity to get in touch. We'd be more than happy to discuss, your thoughts, ideas, opportunities. I know John would definitely appreciate that, right, John?
Absolutely.
Perfect. I just want to thank you very much for the opportunity to show you something awesome, Ucommerce for Sitefinity. Thanks for your time. I hope you found it instructive, useful. And then back to Chuck.
Yeah, thank you. Again, thank you, everybody, for attending today. John and Soren and Chris as backup to help support me with the questions. Again, thank you for joining this month's Insights into Sitefinity.